oldest artifact in my collection, Dad's school diary from 1939. The pages are brittle, discolored with age. Some corners crumble at my touch. This is the deepest layer of the archaeological dig, the oldest evidence of who Roy Skoog was before the world began shaping him into something else. The cover reads, "My school day autobiography," in careful lettering, and just inside a fading inscription that reads, "School day memories bring back pleasant thoughts of happy hours spent in work and play." As I gingerly turn the pages, I can see that this isn't just a diary. It's a time capsule of a boy who was deeply loved. But before we can understand the significance of this diary, we need to excavate an even deeper layer, a story that shaped everything about how Dad moved through the world. It's a story he rarely told in full, though fragments of it surface throughout my childhood. It's the story of Aunt Lydia's death. Picture rural Minnesota, 1934. Dad is 7 years old. His father, Olaf, has been taken to the tuberculosis sanatorium. TB was still often a death sentence in those days. Sima, Dad's mother, is left alone to manage an 80-acre farm and care for 5 young children. The world around them feels dangerous. A brutal murder has been committed just a half a mile from their farm. A woman was killed and buried in a shallow grave on her own property. Sima is living in fear, as family records put it, trying to hold everything together while her husband fights for his life. That's when Sima's younger sister, Aunt Lydia, arrives with her green suitcase and a light Finnish accent. She sets up a cot in the upstairs hallway and takes charge of keeping the household running while Dad's older brothers handle the barn chores. As the middle child, Dad is assigned to fill in where he's needed. Lydia assigns him girls' work that he initially resents. But Aunt Lydia becomes his teacher. He follows her to light the outdoor oven before sunrise as the bread rises on the counter. He watches as she pickles vegetables from the garden and teaches him which plants are weeds. She reads bedtime stories, and sometimes Dad gets to sit on her lap. On Sundays, the family makes the long drive to the sanatorium in their Model A Ford. TB is contagious and they have to stay outside. They all line up at a small window where Dad's father's face appears, gray and tired, but he's smiling for the kids. They pass food through the window and promise to behave until he can come home. This routine continues for months, Aunt Lydia teaching, caring, and helping to hold the family together against the backdrop of fear and uncertainty. But then comes the Monday that changes everything. The family wakes up covered in red, itchy welts, which turn out to be bedbug bites. Everything in the house needs to be washed and disinfected. It's wash day anyway, so Aunt Lydia organizes the massive undertaking of filling metal buckets of water out on the lawn and cleaning every piece of fabric in the house. After hanging the last sheet to dry, she sends Dad to fetch a can of gasoline from the shed, a common disinfectant in those days. She dilutes it with water in a metal spray bottle and heads upstairs to treat the mattresses. As Dad carries the gasoline can carefully back outside, he's remembering his father's warnings about being cautious around fuel. Just as he sets the can down on the grass, he hears a scream. Up the stairs he runs. Rounding the top step, he sees Aunt Lydia engulfed in flames from head to toe, still holding the metal spray bottle. She's thrashing on the floor like a rabid animal. The sounds her voice makes terrifies him. The gasoline has somehow ignited, maybe from the static electricity, maybe from the hot summer air, or maybe from a spark no one could have predicted. The family rushes to cover her with the cold, wet laundry from the clothesline, but it's too late. Before long, the doctor arrives and delivers his verdict. More than 90% of her body is burned. She will surely die. That evening, Dad, age 7, sneaks upstairs to see Aunt Lydia. Her eyes are stuck open, and they follow him as he approaches her bedside. She reaches out her burned arm and whispers, "I'm going to God, Roy. I have done my best to teach you everything you'll need to know until your papa gets back. Listen to your ma and be a good boy." As she passes, the family gathers around her bed, and sings her into the next world. God be with you till we meet again. She's buried behind the church the next day. Dad spends the rest of that summer filling in for Aunt Lydia, no longer caring that dish duty was a girl's job. When his father finally comes home, having lost a lung, but alive, Dad has learned lessons that will shape his entire approach to life. What does a 7-year-old learn from witnessing such senseless tragedy in a world already marked by violence and fear? That good people can suffer terribly through no fault of their own. That someone you love can disappear in an instant. That when crisis hits, you step up and do whatever work needs to be done, regardless of whether it's your job or not. Most importantly, Dad learned that acts of service, like Aunt Lydia teaching him to garden, are expressions of love that outlast the person who gives them. Decades later, Dad would express his own love through similar acts of practical care. But maybe the deepest lesson was this. Witnessing such sudden, senseless loss taught Dad that life is fragile and precious, that gentle people can suffer terribly, and that the response to trauma should be increased tenderness, not increased hardness. With this context, Dad's 1939 school diary becomes even more extraordinary. Here was a boy who had witnessed unimaginable tragedy, who had taken on adult responsibilities while his father fought for his life, who had learned that safety and security could evaporate in an instant. Yet, by age 12, he found refuge and joy in learning in a one-room schoolhouse that became his sanctuary. The first page lists his teachers from 1st through 8th grade: Gertrude Heikkinen, Martha Ratika, Leanna Burns, Mamie Ali, Laura Stramen, Harry Sartain, and Mrs. Emil Pietila. Each of Dad's teachers carefully recorded in perfect penmanship. But this diary is more than Dad's personal record. It actually reads like a friendship book, filled with messages from classmates who clearly adored him. Dear Roy, when you're grown up, you may have a trophy cup. But will you remember me when you're grown up? 7th grade, writes his brother Walter with such tenderness, assuming Dad was destined for recognition or for success or for something special. Dear Roy, it makes me giggle. I want to laugh. To think you want my autograph. Truthfully yours, Irene W. Irene's flirtation is delightful. Dad has apparently asked her for an autograph, and she's clearly giggling on the page about it. Dearest Roy, the higher the mountain, the cooler the breeze. The higher the dress, the cooler the knees. Your loving friend, Grace Marie, 5th grade. Forget me not. Grace Marie's bold verse, complete with flower drawings and hearts pierced by arrows, suggests that Dad was quite the heartthrob. Mom would have been very jealous had she seen this. Dear Roy, some boys go to London, some boys go to France, but Roy stays at home and gives the girls a chance. Your schoolmate, Verna May Ilitalo. Verna May's teasing reveals Dad's reputation. He was the boy who gives the girls a chance. Nearly everyone signs off with "forget me not," as if their connection to Dad was so precious they couldn't bear the thought of being forgotten. The diary contains entries in Finnish from classmates and one from Dad's father, Olaf, in Swedish. I had this translated. Happiness wanders to and fro, so does this little verse also. Even recovering from tuberculosis, Olaf found poetry for his son's diary. This immigrant community, Finnish, Swedish, English woven together, valued connection across language barriers, treasured learning despite economic hardship. But maybe the most profound entry comes from his teacher, Harry Sartain, written in April 1941. Dear Roy, if you want to be respected as a gentleman, kind and true, I'll write a few lines to tell you the best thing you can do. Do what your conscience tells you. And while you are yet a lad, remember the best one to follow is the example set by your dad. Sincerely, your friend and teacher, Harry Sartain. You are a good worker, Roy. This teacher saw Dad's character and recognized something special, not just intelligence, but integrity. The advice to follow his father's example would prove prophetic. Dad would indeed spend his life following Olaf's model of quiet dignity, hard work, and compassion despite suffering. If you're connecting with this archaeological approach to understanding our parents, digging through old diaries and family stories to find the beloved child beneath the adult we thought we knew, I invite you to join me at my Substack newsletter, Things I Meant to Tell You. It's where I share more stories about the other side of complicated family dynamics and everything I was once certain about. You can find it by searching Things I Meant to Tell You on Substack. What this deepest archaeological layer reveals is crucial. Dad was loved first, before he was marked as different. He was celebrated before he was silenced. He was seen as special before he learned to step back. The boy in this diary isn't struggling with social acceptance despite his cleft palate. He's confident enough to ask girls for their autographs. He's popular enough that they respond with warmth and flirtation. He's respected enough that his teacher sees leadership potential in him. This wasn't a child who was naturally withdrawn or naturally modest. This was a child who is naturally beloved, naturally confident, naturally seen as destined for great things. Which makes what happened later even more heartbreaking. The child who was treasured became an adult who was targeted. The boy his classmates thought was special became a man fellow churchgoers would mock for his speech difficulties. But perhaps the Aunt Lydia tragedy explains something about Dad's later response to cruelty. He had learned at age 7 that good people can suffer terribly through no fault of their own, that tragedy can strike the innocent, that the proper response to witnessing pain is compassion, not judgment. When church members later mocked him, Dad didn't respond with anger or revenge because he understood something that they didn't. That cruelty towards the vulnerable makes the world more dangerous for everyone. Having witnessed senseless suffering up close, he chose to make the world gentler through his own actions. This is what the deepest layer of the excavation reveals. A boy who learned both love and loss before most children learn to tie their shoes. A boy who discovered that terrible things can happen to good people, but also that acts of love, like teaching a child to bake bread, like writing forget-me-not in his diary, can outlast the person who gives them. The boy who had learned to garden during family crisis, who had witnessed tragedy and chosen tenderness, who had found sanctuary in learning despite trauma, this boy would grow into a man who expressed love through practical service, who responded to cruelty with gentleness, who found refuge in books when the world proved harsh. Next week, we move up to the next layer, the sediment of rejection. We'll examine how the world began teaching this beloved child that his voice didn't matter, starting with his classification as unfit for military service during World War II. But for now, we have this evidence from the deepest layer. Roy Skoog was loved first. Everything that came after, the silence, the stepping back, the careful self-concealment, was learned behavior. Underneath it all was this boy, confident and beloved, asking girls for their autographs and giving everyone a chance. Next week, we dig deeper into how the world began teaching Dad to disappear.